Hey guys, so let me actually shut this off quick. Hey guys, so it is actually November 9th, and I'm actually downstairs checking out weather underground for tomorrow's hunt. It's going to be November 10th, and I'm supposed to have easterly winds, which is a good, perfect wind for slipping back into the stand that I was up Tuesday night. It's actually right next to Bertier's preferred bedding area, so I'm going to slide in there tomorrow in the afternoon after working in the morning, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I lay eyes on stand for the first time on him, and who knows, may even get a shot. I have made the decision I am going to shoot him if I get a chance. But that's not why I'm making this video. Why I'm making this video, as you can probably already tell, is I had an experience with a trespasser, and I'm going to lay it all out a little bit in this. We're going to try to keep this video as condensed as possible. But I was hunting Tuesday night. I slipped into that stand. I hadn't hunted that stand in probably, I hunted it the first week of October if I remember right, and then I hadn't been back. Been letting it set. The bean field to the southeast, they planted late, was up, and that didn't come down until like a week and a half ago, so didn't really plan on hunting the property until that was gone, and sure enough the deer started moving back in. But I slipped in there. I spooked a couple of deer out of the dirt track, but they came back, and I actually had deer in front of me all night for the most part. It actually was a little rough because I had more of a north wind than an east wind, and I needed it to be more easterly to blow out of the food and towards me. And you're actually watching some footage right now of, I had a doe, there was a group of 3 deer, and when the mature doe got beside me and then slightly out in front of me, that north wind was kicking out of the west a little bit. We were blowing right at her. It was a calm breeze. If it would have been a brisk breeze, I don't think I would have had a problem, but she never quite figured out what the issue was. She never blew. She did stomp and stamp some, but she did feed while she was there. They eventually did feed off undisturbed. It was extremely crazy situation where I really thought I was going to get busted. But amazingly, that mature doe never actually picked me off scent-wise. She just could get enough to where she was uneasy and uncomfortable, but I was extremely shocked. I then had another deer work its way in front of me from the other direction. I started getting extremely excited. This deer was by itself. I could tell that her back hind tarsal glands were browning. So I was like, man, there's a chance there could be a buck with her. This was right around 5:30. 5:30 was about a half hour before I could legally shoot anymore. Right a little bit after 6 was when legal time was going to be up. This doe just starts taking off. And I never quite understood why. But then when I shut the camera off, when the deer ran away, I began to hear a voice. And it sounded like it was off in the distance. But then it started getting closer, and it was coming from behind my stand. And behind my stand, the way the stand is oriented, I'm basically facing south, slightly to the southeast. And to the north, I own probably 80 more yards up in through a pine grove, and then up in behind a facility, a storage facility that has overgrown field in the back, and then there's some houses to the north of that property. So I thought it was odd that these voices were getting closer. And the next thing I knew, I could hear that they were actually on my property, and it sounded like an individual talking to either dogs, I found out it was dogs, or another person. They proceeded to walk down the path behind me. I then see that it's not a hunter. That was the first thing and I wish I would have turned the camera on, but I didn't. It was a woman walking 2 dogs, and as you can imagine, she was walking in prime time. I was extremely frustrated, but I had a decision to make right then and there. How was I going to have this go down? Was I going to be an absolute jerk and let my frustration cross the line to where I'm going to become the one that is inappropriate, the one that is acting inappropriately? I was going to make it very clear that I was mad, and I did. I told her to stop. She was trespassing, and she needed to leave. She was extremely startled. I could see her actually physically shaking when I abruptly let loose from the stand. I didn't shout, but I was boisterous enough that she heard me. It was very adamant and very stern and very clear that she needed to leave. She was trespassing and she needed to leave. She said that she had walked back here for years. The funny thing is I heard her as she broke the cover into our clover chicory plot right there that kind of interwoves, and you guys have seen in the video some. She even stated, I heard her was like, oh man, this has really changed. So I knew she hadn't been back there in over a year and a half because I mowed and planted that last spring. So I find that a little now this property just transferred to me last year. And I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but I will say she did confirm that she had no idea that the property had changed hands. It didn't justify her trespassing. She actually had to walk past the trespassing sign. She apologized, so I'm telling her she needs to leave. She's apologizing, but she did say she's been doing it for years, and I go, it doesn't make it legal. You need to leave, and you need to leave now. I forget what she said. She said, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to walk my dogs. I can't walk them on the street. And I go, that's fine, you need to leave. And then as she was walking away up the path, I said, this is your only warning. I will file charges next time, because I wanted her to know that. I take property rights and property ownership extremely serious. And if she had been a hunter, trespassing is one thing. But if you're a hunter trespassing, that means you have intent to poach on my property too. And the situation would have went differently. I would have asked them to freeze, and I wouldn't have like drawn my bow at them or anything, but I would have held them, and I would have been calling a conservation officer or local law enforcement immediately. But I made the decision. This was just somebody trespassing. I hate it. I'm gonna warn them. I'm assuming at this point she's a neighbor. I don't want to have a bad neighbor. I want to have a good neighbor. So she leaves. I'm extremely frustrated. I'm calming down the whole time. I stay up the tree just in case. I still had a half hour. I'm like, these deer are used to people, milling around and everything. Maybe Bertier will come out, or maybe another buck will show up just cruising. Nothing shows up. I slip down. I walk out, and I decide, I'm going to go try to find this woman. And that was for multiple different reasons. I wanted her name. I wanted to put a name to the face. Because I was still debating whether to file an incident report with the police, but just not file charges. That way, I had a record of this occurrence that I could point to in the future that I already forgave her once. There's no need. I'm filing charges, and the judge hopefully will it'll rule in my favor if I'm not lenient in the future with her. I went to a house that I suspected was hers, but I wasn't sure. Again, I didn't have her name. I wanted her name. I did want to apologize for startling and scaring her. My intent was to make it very clear that I was unhappy, but I never meant, she literally was shaking like a leaf. And if somehow this gets back to her and you're watching this video, again, I'm sorry. And thank you so much for what you did, what I'm about to explain. So, guys, I went to the house. It was apparent that it was the house. I recognized the one dog that was barking. She either wasn't there or didn't come to the door, which I come to find out, she lives by herself, and I completely understand not coming. It was dark. It's not a bad area in our area, but it's not a great area either. So, long story short, I left a note on the door, and I asked her to please call me. So she ended up calling me later that night, and we had an amazing conversation. All she was really trying to do was walk her dog. She's had her dogs attacked on her street before by other dogs, and she just was trying to find a safe place to walk her dog, which she has done for years back there, although it had been a while. So I completely understood. I felt bad telling her that I was not going to be able to grant permission to do so. I'm actually going to try to find out if the landowner that owns that dirt tract that I tell you guys about, that I access kind of some to my property, I own a portion of it, would allow her to go around and walk. It's like 4 acres. So we had a great dialogue. She shared a little bit of history of the area and everything. She has my number and my name now. She's promising to keep an eye on that portion of the property because she can look out her backyard window over behind the storage units and onto my property a little bit. And I said, if you ever see anybody back there, I would greatly appreciate a phone call. And she sounds like the type that is more than willing to do that. And just having a friendly set of eyes, keeping an eye on the place is awesome. This was a situation that, and she did express that I made it very clear. She did appreciate that I was not obnoxiously rude. I wasn't, for lack of a better term, a dick to her. I was mad and upset, and she understood. And she said, you made it very clear and you were stern, but she appreciated the fact that I stayed appropriate and I treated her with respect, even though the actions that were happening were not necessarily respectful to me as a landowner. I work hard for that property. I paid for that property. I'm paying for that property. tax-wise and everything. I worked really hard, and I don't want anybody taking advantage of my hard work that I put in to have it. So, but it ended up great. So I say all this, and I tell this entire story to convey this. If you hunt long enough, you're going to run into an issue of whether a poacher, a trespasser, or issues. How you handle them not only reflect the man that you are or the woman that you are, it reflects on the entire situation, on how you are going to be respected by that person. And I understand they're a trespasser. I understand they're a poacher. But in the end, you do want their respect, whether that be because of fear, but they want, I mean, you can be extremely stern. If they were a hunter and a poacher, I would have treated them with respect, but they were going nowhere. And if they run, I'm coming after them. With law enforcement, obviously. I'm not saying I'm going to run them down and try to shoot them or anything, but I'm going to treat them with respect. They made a bad decision, they're going to have to live with it, and they're going to be held accountable for it. But this wasn't a hunter, this wasn't somebody attempting to poach, this was just somebody trespassing. And it doesn't make it any more right, but I do believe in forgiving somebody. And if I had went to her and found out that she was going to keep doing it, or she treated me with disrespect when we finally spoke, I probably would have filed an incident report. I probably would have filed trespassing charges. But she continued to convey to me remorse. When I yelled at her from the stand, she was scared. And when I continued to tell her to leave, she never questioned it, and she began backing out. There was a respect there that she garnered from me immediately by not coming at me, and she acknowledged the fact that she was in the wrong. And then she continued to do so with our verbal conversation. So if I'd have started yelling at her and swearing at her and threatening her and all this stuff, it would have ended poorly. And I would have had a neighbor that knows where one of my tree stands are now, who may have a husband or boyfriend that are going to be an issue for me now. But instead, I have a friendly neighbor who knows me by my first name, has my phone number, is willing to call me if she sees anything suspicious, and I now have another set of eyes that I can trust at a property that I don't live on. And that's tremendous value for me. It goes a long way to have those good relationship with neighbors, even if it starts out bad. You know, I've told you guys stories about at the homestead property, we've had poaching and trespassing done by a neighbor. It is not a good relationship because we didn't handle it appropriately. We probably should have got the conservation officers involved, but had some respect, you know. Going back on it now, I'm sure my dad and I wishes we would have handled that a little differently. But that's a different scenario because when that person was approached, they were dicks back to us, for lack of a better term. I don't like using that term, but that's exactly what they were. So it probably wouldn't have garnered any better. But I just want you to think, it's very hard in the moment to not let your frustration bubble over and begin to scream and articulate your immense frustration. But a lot of people don't view what they're doing as wrong to the degree that you are doing. And I'm not justifying them, but handle it appropriately. Stay calm. You are in the right. You do not need to make it known egregiously that you are in the right. You're in the right. There's no question about it. Handle it and take care of it and have respect and be calm, and you're going to have the best outcomes from it. I promise you that. I believe that even just morally and characterly and biblically. You know, treat others with respect. Even if they've disrespected you, you can still hold them accountable, but treat them with respect. And that's what I attempted to do that night, and it ended up awesome. So just keep that in the back of your mind. You will eventually, as a landowner, I guarantee you're going to run across this. And it is a violation of your rights. You know, I told my father after the story, I just felt so violated. You know, I've had trespassing issues on camera, but I've never actually been there when it's occurred, and it's a whole nother feeling than just seeing a trail cam picture of somebody trespassing. So that's what we got, guys. Make sure you think about it. Just think. That's the biggest thing. You know, I think that's all I got for you guys. So just put that in the back of your head, and remember it. If you ever experience this, I can relate. Let that frustration occur. Be respectful, be stern, get your point across. But do not become the problem. Be the one that's going to say, we're going to solve this. Whether that be through charges, incident report, a very harsh and stern conversation with the person, but you're going to handle it calmly, respectfully, and it's going to get taken care of. So hopefully that all made sense. God bless, guys, and good luck out there.